for those of you who know me, I'm maybe looking a bit weird. For those of you who doesn't, it just may be like that something is in my eye, and I might have to correct it. All right, thank you, Martina and Aničko, for the introduction. And I have prepared a presentation regarding our infinite battle with AI and how we are actually tackling it, and the prototypes that we are building along the way. So for the next half an hour, you will be stuck here with me, but after that, you will have Clara over here, who is going to also be educating you for next half an hour regarding prototyping as well. So that was a weird blank slide. But yeah, the agenda for today is that first I'm going to introduce myself and Make just really quickly. Then I'm going to explain the problem that we have, or provide you with some context of what we are actually solving, and then evaluate like the hurdles on the track which you have when implementing the standard software development lifecycle. After that, we'll move on to how we actually decided to move on in a more flexible way. And I'm actually spoiling it here a bit because you can see that it's Make and Slack, and it was also written in the event description. But yeah, so we will deep dive a bit into that. And last but not least, some takeaways. So hopefully everybody will get something here, not just merch for, yeah, we have a lot of that. But yeah, so I'm Daniel. I'm the product manager here working with an AI and machine learning team. It's a fairly new one here at Make. And I like to optimize stuff, and Make just happens to be like the best tool for that out there, in my opinion. And I'm working with a very skilled team on bringing cool new AI features to Make. So I just happen to be like the face of the operation for now. They are the brains behind it. So if you have any question that I'm unable to answer, there is several people from my team around here. And despite like the titles of the speech and stuff, I'm not into racing. I'm much more in the stuff that are visible on the right side of the screen. And yeah, this is Make. How many of you have heard of it? Like if you don't count that you are in the Make offices and you know that you had to navigate to the place. How many of you have, yeah, how many of you? Cool, that's a fair amount. And how many of you have heard of Integromat? It's approximately the same. If you don't know, we will be shutting down Integromat September 30th. So if you haven't migrated, do so. And how many of you have used Make or Integromat, either of these two? All right, that's cool. So yeah, what I like about Make is that it's visual and it's fun. Fun for me in maybe a bit geeky way. It's fast, like you just connect bubbles, right? So that's easy. And it's empowering because it's giving me as a PM who shouldn't have the right to modify anything in production, the right to actually do it, right? So that's a nice little backdoor over there. It's a no-code / low-code tool. So we are riding this hype wave of these. That's my dog, the black and white one. Hopefully she doesn't mess anything around here. But yeah, and it's always right there when you need it. So you can just like create a scenario on your mobile phone, even though it's not optimized for that. And it's connected with essentially everything, right? We have 1,700 apps with over 25,000 modules, so you can connect 25,000 of these dots together. And I don't know what that would do, probably crash our servers or something, but yeah, you could do that. Regarding the area that we are solving, it's AI, right? So that's a very complex and a new area that, or it's not that new, but like it became generally in the general awareness in the last year or so. And whenever you mention to somebody that you are working with AI, they have these hyper expectations, right? There is such a big buzz. There are tens of startups appearing every week, I would say. And our competitors are investing a shit ton of money in AI. They are shifting their product strategies to be like AI first. So yeah, so there's that. You also have no time because even though you are just starting, you are already late because there has been so many successful launches over the time. Yeah. And we have, or we had, we now grew a lot in this area, but we had a small and a new team. So in the beginning, the first couple of months, I would say like 1 or 2, we had 1 developer and 3 managers. So yeah, on the stand-ups, I wouldn't want to be in the developer's skin. And you have this aspiring new technology that also happens to change almost every day. So it feels like essentially you're building on top of on water, right? You never know when it's going to break or when your solution is going to become obsolete, because there is nothing established yet. You just know that at some point you will call OpenAI's API, but everything else is unknown. My job was easy, right? I had to identify the problem that we set ourselves to solve, which was that we saw our new users struggle with creating their first scenarios, right? Because as I mentioned, the scale of the platform is fairly big. And if you just signed up and you want to automate your very first task and you have to find these two bubbles in those 25,000, that can be quite a challenging job. So I envisioned something like this, which is like a chat-like interface where you describe the problem that you want to solve, and we would present you with a visual representation of the scenario, which actually happens not to be just the visual representation, but the actual stuff that you need for it to run. So my acceptance criteria would be something like users enter a description of their business problem, and we do magic and generate a scenario that solves it. So very easy, right? Work piece is achieved and you have profit. Apparently, it's not as simple as I thought in the first place. We didn't even knew whether this is possible or not, right? The technology is like such a black box, and even the outputs are never the same when you provide the same input, right? It's non-deterministic, it's a probabilistic thing. So at the point, like, we forgot who we even are, what are we doing? And it became sort of complex. And maybe, hello? Yeah, sorry for that. Maybe I'll try switching microphone, sorry.
Working, it's working. Hopefully this is going to be better experience. Sorry, guys.
All right, sorry for that. So even more so, like it's such a complicated problem on its own, and even more so if you have to like follow the traditional process, which may include something like setting up your production and development environment, staging, whatever environments you want. You just have to set up, maintain, and deploy stuff. You also have to be production ready, right? Whatever that might mean, like including stuff like QA, unit tests, some reliability of your service, which is hard to maintain if you have one developer. And you are limited by your own tech stack, right? Our developers are sitting on the 7th floor usually, and they all, or most of them, write in Node.js. And that just happens not to be the biggest friend with the machine learning area, or the machine learning guys who we ended up hiring are definitely not friends. They might be even considered enemies of Node. And however beneficial they might be in the standard process, pull request reviews and merging, it just all takes time, right? And you have to like move fast on this in this race. And last but definitely not least is the security, because I don't know if you heard Microsoft earlier this week leaked 38 terabytes of their data, and you just don't want to be another Microsoft in this race. So whenever you are putting something to production, just please double check that everything is tight. And so eventually we exposed some API, right? Our backend guys switched from Node. We set up like a non-production ready Python service. We exposed an API from that service, and they were like, well, here it is, and you can play around with it, which is an easy job for me, right? I set up a Postman and I just pinged the API and I saw the response, but it's not the most visually appealing and the best experience that you can have. And it doesn't provide your managers the confidence that they essentially need in the product that you are building. Because, like, imagine being in the shoes of our leadership who invested a lot of money in this AI project. We ended up hiring, I don't know, nine people is in our team roughly now, and they just didn't see anything basically produced by us for several months, because you don't want to put an unfinished product based on AI to production So we were very careful when we would make this first appearance. So we were wondering basically how to share it, at least internally, so that people could interact with it. And it's not the best if you just send over like a Postman file that everybody could play with, or if everybody had to create a scenario such as this one, just to call an API endpoint and see the structured response. That's not what I wanted, right? And we also started to lack creativity because we kept prompting the solution with the same exact prompts, and we kept getting various results. And we were just able, each one of us, basically to provide like 5 examples, and we were just like eyeballing the results, whether we are making a progress to the better or to worse. And yeah, this wasn't the way for us. Like we needed something more interesting, which we decided to like achieve by following the divide and conquer approach. So we divided this huge problem of solving the stuff that I outlined, right? The human input to solution, or however you may call it, into much smaller and more graspable tasks, and like try to conquer them individually. So you have this area of information retrieval, for example, and you try various examples. You see multiple ones of them fail, and then you have this like one Northern Light which suddenly doesn't fail, and you can consider that like a small victory, and you conquered that small part, and you can move on to solving the other. And then you just combine it, and hopefully you will get something that you can call an MVP. And I was sitting in the room and I was thinking, how can I, as a product manager, actually help my developers? Because I had all my documents written down, right? I cannot do much more than that. Hopefully I can, but yeah. So I felt slightly out of work on my end because it was such a big technical problem that that I went on to solving. And I was thinking, like, what apps do I use the most, right? Obviously, I use Confluence to just document stuff. But what can you do there outside in that? Then I use Slack to just ping people from all around. I don't have to introduce it, right? Then I use Make. It just happens to be like my everyday thing, even though it's definitely not in my role description. I just like procrastinate over in Make, I think. And then I use Jira. And I was thinking, like, do I connect Confluence with Slack? It's good for notifications, right? But it doesn't make too much sense for our case. Do I connect Make to Jira? It's again good for like changing of statuses, but not for our case. And this like started to make a lot more sense because I could call the API that the guys exposed, right, from Make, and everybody in Slack, in Make uses Slack. Sorry, it's getting a bit more complicated than I expected. So I imagine that I could theoretically have Slack call this API and then like visually somehow represent the scenario that was being generated. And this is something that I could probably even share with the leadership team, that they could type in a message somewhere and get a result in Slack. And yeah, so I decided to take this approach like of doing it in the no-code way, so that the guys wouldn't have to actually build it in this traditional way, even though it may look cool and like for metrics on these curved monitors, right? But I decided to build it in an interface which looks much closer to Confluence, which is my primary tool, right? The white background and stuff. And you just so happen to basically skip the deployment limitations, reviews, and it's like so much fun for me. And like actually, if you think about it, like we start, so sorry, marketing, this is definitely not following our brand guidelines to use the word make so much in one sentence, but we ended up using make to make better. So yeah, because yeah, it's essentially like powering some of the tools that we are having exposed even in production. So yeah, it's like drinking our own champagne kind of thing. And yeah, now for the deep dive. So game on, one of our company values, and actually it's very much like the YOLO attitude. And yeah, just imagine that you have these apps in Slack. They are usually defined in the visual interface. You just click on the buttons over there. You define the OAuth scopes and stuff. In my demo, I skipped that part using a YAML. I will share that later. But yeah, let's go in the demo. And just bear with me. I wanted to do it live, but I ended up having even 3 attempts to build it in such a nice sequence that I decided to record it and walk you through it. Right. So the journey starts in the Slack API app or whatever. It's a web page where you actually create a new application. I have this manifest prepared. I'll share it with you guys later. But essentially, it's defining just the OAuth scopes and stuff. The app emits events, right? You can consume those. So you have a field for a request URL, and you actually can expose a scenario using a webhook. So that's a URL that just listens for stuff, which is exactly what we need here, right? So I'm going to create a new webhook which listens for events. So what is happening here is that I'm setting a scenario that will get triggered whenever a new message is sent to the bot. Slack actually requires some verification, so it just needs to receive a challenge parameter in response. So that was done like that. So, but it's something that you don't have to worry about, I guess. But we don't need that further down, so I just removed it. And now I want to add some interactivity to the app. You have various apps like Giphy, which use the / commands, or you have the Google Calendar, which uses buttons. And these events from the buttons actually also have to be consumed somewhere, right? So that's another webhook. So whenever a button in my message in Slack gets clicked, it's gonna fire this scenario, and I'm gonna receive some payload of data. Now let's actually try whether it works. So I will head. I actually also have to install the app, right? That's something that I would probably forget to do in the demo. So it was just a 2-click OAuth process, and now the app is actually available to hold 300 people in Make. Probably not the best idea for a demo app, but it's there. And everybody can message the app, and you actually can see that I typed in hello and I received it over in Make, and I can now further work with what I received. So let's, for example, have ChatGPT provide a response to what I typed so that we see some interactivity, and also so that we write the AI bus. So I'm passing actually the text that the user inputted as the prompt to ChatGPT, and I'll just generate a reply in Slack, right? So I will create a message, and I have to add a connection because what was happening before is that Make was consuming stuff from Slack, but now we need the other way, right? The other direction. Now Make needs to actually emit stuff to Slack so that you actually see the message and it's not sent as your user, but as the bot. So you have to just figure out where you want the message to be written. So I'm mapping the channel from the channel of the originating event, and I'm mapping the response from ChatGPT. So this is what it returned for my hi in this example. And just, I don't want to spam it in the direct message. I put it to thread, which is what I did. And yeah, let's try that. And you can see that there is a new message which appeared from the bot, which was controlled using Make. And actually it can maintain the conversation. So basically using these, I don't know how much it was, 3 modules, you can have a ChatGPT version directly in your Slack. And you can even add some logging in between, right? You can store everything in some database and have logging on top of ChatGPT with 4 modules. So that's the first part. But now let's try and add interactivity. The buttons and inputs and all of these fun stuff are actually represented by a block kit. So you have this block kit builder, which is this. And actually how I ended up with the JSON, which I just copy pasted, is that I did exactly a drag and drop from the left sidebar. And I just have this JSON. So I'm still mapping the prompt or the response from ChatGPT, and I have 2 buttons, do this and do that. It should be rather simple. So let's try. Right, took a while to respond, but yeah, we have 2 buttons, and that's what I wanted for the purpose of the message, how it should look like. And now let's actually focus on how you can actually react. So when a user clicks a button, for example, like make an API call on your backend and stuff, you can do that, but you have to do that in the interactivity scenario, right? That's a different type of event emitted by the make app. Yeah, it just returned me an unparsed JSON, so I'm just parsing that. So that's what's happening over here. And yeah, let's try it again. Sorry for my typing with typos. And now if I just click the button, you can see the payload that I receive, and it contains like the name of the action, so the action ID. So I know that the user click that or do that. Sorry. And what I want is basically because the same scenario gets triggered for both of the apps, for both of the buttons. Sorry. And I just need a router and set up some conditions over there that if the user click the button, do this, go this route. If they click the button, do that, go the bottom route. So that's fairly simple. And now, just for the sake of relative simplicity of this demo, I'll just like provide or update the initial message. So I'll remove the buttons and change the content of it. And just to keep it shorter, I will just like put some static content in there. So here I'm figuring out which message to update because like it doesn't have the context, right? So you have to map the outputs of the trigger module essentially. I'm removing the buttons over here, which is what's happening. You could do that also in the visual interface. Just click a trash bin. And yeah, so I'm typing a static text of, all right, I did that. And in between like these two modules in your real life, you would likely actually perform some actions, right? Make some API calls, store some data, or get some data from somewhere. Just do your thing. And in the second route, I'm actually just gonna modify the message a tiny bit, and you would have that. Right now, let's try it out. It's a bit more complicated question, right? So you can see me stress clicking. But yeah, AI finally figured it out. And but I don't care too much about the response. So I just click the button and I can now see, all right, I did it. And if I ask a follow-up question and I click the second button, I'm going to end up with the other response which you configured. And that's essentially what I wanted to show in the demo. So you could see me create like a Slack app, which is powered by Make as backend, and it can have interactivity, it can connect with AI, it can connect with whatever of your APIs, and I did that in 6 minutes. So this is like the speed of the prototypes that you can actually get to. For those of you who got a bit bored and were just looking around the screen, you could see like one mistake that I did over there, and that is that in one of the threads there were 14 replies, and I actually forgot or I misconfigured it, and all of the events, whenever there was a new message, whoever sent it, so that's the mistake I did, even the bot triggered the scenario, and the bot ended up talking to itself. So it was then fun to read like this, the thread of 14 messages where AI was reasoning to itself, and yeah, that could get expensive really quick because I was making ChatGPT 4 calls for some reason. I could have easily gone with 3.5, but yeah, so it's easily fixable by a filter. All right, and if you fast forward to now, the clicker is not clicking. It's one only job. Right. So I just modified the scenario a bit. And this is one of, I guess, 4 scenarios which is powering the solution that we ended up having for the prototype. And the experience that we aimed for and which we actually managed to achieve is that when I say a prompt like this, so every time Greg sends me an email, delete it because I don't care about Greg, it can actually generate me a message response like this, where it describes the scenario which it built, which in this case would be just watch for new emails and then delete them. And I can show provided sources. That's usually when we don't trust or when we don't like the output. We look where the mistake might have been. So we debug basically using this button. Then we built like a cool feature of previewing the scenario. So it can just show you visually the bubbles before you actually decide to push or to click the second button. And the second button is where like the magic happens, right? Because I know who clicked the button. I ask the users first to configure their API token in another view of the Slack app. And this actually authorizes the users using their API token. It passes the output of the AI, which is the blueprint. That's the code representation of the scenario. And it calls make API to actually create this in production. So this button then changes from create in make to show in make, and you can just go and run the scenario right away and see how it behaves. And this was essentially something that we could much more easily share around the company, right? I just created a channel, AI Copilot, invited a whole bunch of people over there, shared it with the executives, and everybody was satisfied. Like, right, it's motivating the team because they are seeing some traffic, they are seeing some feedback. It proved to management that we are actually doing something, that we can actually generate somewhat meaningful scenarios. And yeah, it was, or it still actually functions. So it was an okay Slack app, and we ended up creating a whole bunch of those for various use cases. So to wrap things up, I would like you to take this YAML file and use it as you will. So it's available at the bit.ly link. I'll also have this presentation somehow shared to you so that you can actually rewatch the video maybe at half the speed, because I know that I was clicking like crazy because I only have 30 minutes, right, for this speech. And I could easily do that scenario for 30 minutes if I wanted the demo to be more exciting, I guess. And I would also say that failure can sometimes be a success. It narrows your scope down. If you break the problem in, or your end solution to various problems, and you just identify that you are unable to solve some of them, it at least shows you what is not the path, right? So this failure can like somewhat be considered a success. And it goes actually hand in hand with the focusing on small victories to keep engagement. So it's keeping the engagement on both of the sides, like both your leadership and the customers. And customers in our case are the internal ones for now. And yeah, production always doesn't mean the same. I could easily consider our solution right now to be in some form of production, even though it's very far from the actual production, which is our actual like scenario builder, right, where we are aiming for. And yeah, that's essentially all I wanted to share right now. I will definitely stick around for some questions and beer and for the panel discussion. And I guess I'm the only one surprisingly wearing this t-shirt. So yeah, so feel free to grab a beer later on.
Thanks, Daniel. It's not over yet, sorry. We have a few questions for you. I have to read it, sorry.
Right.
The hardest one is, how old is your dog?
She's 2 years.
2 years.
That was easy, thank you.
Yeah. Now the easier. What is the biggest challenge when building AI-powered products?
Right, so just yesterday I learned about this interesting statistics from Gartner's, and that is that 85% of machine learning / AI projects fail. So I guess it's living with this in your head because you're very likely to fail, actually. And I think I tried mentioning this, and that is that the technology is so new and it's ever changing, and you just don't know if you pick the right tools because like nothing is established, nothing has been used for more than half a year. So we also, like during the process, we have already switched various providers, right? We had Quadrant as a vector database, and we ended up switching from them to Supabase. And yeah, so you have to make a lot of changes, which usually wouldn't, because if you have a Node.js stack, yeah, you're pretty much good, right? There is not that much happening over there in comparison with AI. Yeah, and also like the probabilistic part of it, that it just returns random output sometimes.
That's it. And the last one is, can you briefly summarize what are the next step is the AI project here in Make?
Yeah, productionalize it. So right, we have like this Slack demo, which is actually powered by almost production level backend by now, because as I said, we hired much more people, so we were actually able to make the service somewhat production ready. And we are right now in the process of building the MVP front-end implementation, which will be hidden behind a feature flag. So we then essentially want to share this out in the wild, first starting carefully with the internal users, who happen to be like the actual power users of Make as well, right? So these are actually somewhat valid customers to us. And then we have a waiting list for this feature with a couple of thousand people. So we will slowly but surely be rolling it out, gathering feedback, and hopefully we will not have to rewrite it from scratch based on the feedback. But even that's a valuable lesson learned.
Thank you so much, Dan. Can I please ask you for a final round of applause for Dan? Okay, someone fell over. Do we have another one? Yes, is on it. Awesome. Okay. The next speaker is Clara, and what I wanted to say for Dan's presentation, for who of you are interested, we'll be sharing the presentation in the follow-up tomorrow, so you won't miss out. And Clara, I will ask her to come on stage and briefly introduce her. Sorry. Clara is a co-founder and CEO of Talkbase, and Talkbase enables community team to build their communities, community operations, and even this event is done through Talkbase. You signed up for it. And I'm super happy that she joined us for the talk, and she's also one of the smartest people I know. And yeah, I'm getting emotional, so I'm gonna leave the stage. Please welcome Clara, and yeah, enjoy.
All right, so it's March 2023. I'm sitting in a board meeting with our investors, and we're looking at the data of our product, and we're like, guys, we have a problem. This is not really working. We've been building Talkbase for a little over a year at that time, and we had this vision, right, to empower community managers, to help them do their job easier, to help the amazing teams like Make here, right, run these great events and understand the data behind. But what we realized is that we're not solving the right problem. We had the right vision, we had the right mission, but we weren't really building a product that would be really it. It wasn't a painkiller, it was a vitamin, as they say. So as it is in startups, you have limited money, limited time, and limited resources. So you have to prototype really quickly. So today I'm going to talk about the lessons learned before March 2023, and since then, how we built Talkbase Analytics in 4 months. Thank you, Ani, so much for the introduction. My name is Clara. I'm one of the co-founders at Talkbase. My second co-founder is right over there. He's the guy behind all the tech stuff. So hopefully I won't mess anything up here today. And yeah, it's been an amazing journey so far. Our third co-founder is in San Francisco, so she could not join us today. But yeah, hopefully you guys will learn something. It was actually really awesome to put this together. I've never had the chance to review our product history. I usually talk about communities and leadership, so this is actually really fun for me too. So when we talk about product and ideas and prototyping, you're actually putting ideas into products, right? But what that really is actually putting theory into action. Now, how can you do that? You can prototype in a lot of different ways, and I think Martin showed it absolutely amazingly, right? You can prototype with amazing tools, but you can also prototype just like I did a week ago with a whiteboard and a marker. This is actually the current prototype of our new website that's gonna come up. You can also prototype with amazing tools like Miro. This is actually, I'm just gonna move the cursor here, bothering me a little bit. You can actually prototype with Miro. This is the very easy to use prototype of how we're gonna connect Talkbase and HubSpot and run all of our go-to-market motions seamlessly. Piece of cake, this was the first version. We actually ended up killing it like 3 months later, but that's another story. Or you can prototype in different programs, apps, or even in Figma, right? What you need to do is make that theory into action. And that's what I'm going to talk about. First, I want to share 2 big lessons learned until March 2023 with you, how we did not prototype and all the mistakes that we made. And then I'm going to share with you our journey over the last 4 months. All right, so the first big mistake that we have made at Talkbase, it's very humbling to be able to talk about it, is we did not learn how to properly close the loops. Now, what I mean by closing the loops, when you're building a product, your product needs to do a couple of things, right? Your product should be repeatable. Your users should come, they should be able to do an action, they have a need, they need to do an action, they should be able to complete it and then repeat it, right? That's how we get that recurring revenue, users getting value, right? If we're building a SaaS business, that's exactly what you want. You want your users, like I said, to find a repeatable task to do. You want them to complete it. You want them to come back. If they do not complete it, if they come to you with a problem, they test your product, it does not close the loop, or it takes them somewhere else, they're not going to use your product, right? So if you actually build multiple features within one product, which happens always, your loops expand, right? But they should always be within each other. Your goal is not to take your users out of the product or give them another task to do that your product cannot solve. You probably know where I'm going with this. We broke the loop. So what we were actually investing a lot of time in, and what we built, and what we kind of forgot to prototype and kind of forgot to feedback with our users, was one of our features that we're actually killing this month. We built the feature based on things that we thought were really good. We thought we had a great idea. All founders do, all early stage startups do. And we didn't ask enough feedback. And I'm going to talk about feedback a little later as well. The last but not like the really important thing is we did not think about the loop. We did not think about the customer journey throughout the product, throughout their needs, and we didn't close it. So our loop, and excuse my Figma skills, looked something like this. So it was really awful. And it derailed us. It got us a ton of feedback on this completely new problem that we really didn't want to solve, didn't have months and months and months to invest in. And it was awful. So we broke the loop. Now, how can prototyping actually help you stay in that customer journey, make sure that you don't break the loop, and that you are able to build products that are fast, that are loved by your users, right? And that you can validate early on without having to invest that much time like we did. Right? You create the first version of your prototype. You want to visualize the journey your user is going to take and take it yourself, and try to put yourself in those in the shoes of your users. And once you do that, you watch your users go through that. Super simple, right? They should close the loop. Ask them. And I actually have a couple questions for you. Ask them what are the different steps that they were taking. Do not help them. Does the user complete the loop, right? Do they have any other actions they want to take after? Is there a potential product feedback hidden there for you? Should you do something differently? Or do they get derailed and blocked and confused like they did in one of our features? That's what you want to avoid, right? So these are the couple of questions that you want to ask yourselves when you are prototyping to understand, closing of the customer journey and to close the loop. All right, the second big mistake. We did get user feedback. We get a lot of it. Actually, one of our initial pitch decks back in the day said that I interviewed over 300 community managers before we built the first version of the product. And I'll tell you why that was a mistake very soon. So you need to get product feedback because you're not building the product for you, right? You're building it for your users. Very obvious. But I think especially in early stage, and especially if you're trying to go fast, you get very few points of product feedback and you make assumptions very quickly. So you want to understand what is the task that your users want to solve, right? You want to understand the mechanics of it. You don't need to understand the colors of the buttons. You don't need to understand the design yet. You need to understand the mechanics, right? That's why you prototype. That's why you draw the loop. Building and asking for product feedback will also help you understand the different edge cases. So if you prototype and however you do it, your users will always discover different areas that you forgot about. I don't think that I've ever been in a software company where users have tested something and they found an edge case. Happens every single time, right? So the goal of your prototype is to help uncover those so that you're ready, so that before you pass that prototype and that beautiful design over to your engineering team, everybody knows what they're doing, and at least you cover at least half of those edge cases. And last but not least, you'll be able to build valuable relationships. If it's going to be the first prototype you're working on, next time you already have a great list of people you can call, you can talk to, and ask them for some more feedback, right? If users really love your mission and love what you're doing, they're going to be really eager to talk to you. So relationships are super important as well. So how we messed up getting user feedback? Well, we initially tried to build product for everyone. We were talking to everyone. We were talking to companies that were not in our ICP, not in our ideal customer profile. So what happened was that we got way too much feedback on way too many different areas, and we would have 10,000 loops going, and we would never finish building it in time. Later, we only gathered feedback during our sales calls. You might think that's great, right? We have a sales call, somebody tells us, hey, I want this feature. If you build it, I'll pay for it. Well, it doesn't really work that way. It's very rare that when you come back to a user after 6 months that they're, all right, I'm going to do this, I'm ready, because you always need more, right? You need them to understand, all right, you need to understand the task that they need to do, right? What are the steps? What are the mechanics? What's the task that they need to complete, right? So that's why doing user feedbacks over different prototypes, visual aids are extremely helpful. I did find a study that said that 65% of people can actually understand the solution better if you give them a visual aid, which I think is a pretty good number. But yeah, the next big mistake we did while building was not asking the hard questions. The hardest question, and I'll have it there, is will you pay for it? Right? That's the hardest one. So when you build that prototype and you give them the solution, the goal is to show them how you complete the task. So don't worry about how pretty it looks. Don't worry about how fast you put it together, right? Worry about, is this solving their pain point? Is this helping them? Is this helping the user achieve the task that they want to do? And last but not least, we did not centralize our feedback. We're very messy. Early stage startups always are, and that caused us to then not have enough information when we started building those initial prototypes. So we had to go back to the drawing board, back to user interviews, and do them all over again. So I'll show you how we currently work with user feedback and how we're building prototypes. I have 4 different bubbles here. I was actually afraid that can you see the bubbles or do you just see the text? All right, I might help you. I thought this might happen. Oh, right, there we go. I'll sit here and I'll walk you through it. So right now in our prototyping process, while doing user interviews, we have 4 different categories. We have ideas, we have feedback, we have the prototype, and then we have our product. So how we usually work right now is that our team has ideas. We already have some user feedback because we already centralized it. We have some advisor ideas that are also helping us with our product, and we have some product roadmap, right? You always have a vision of what you want to build. So we build prototype version 1. We take that prototype to our team, and our team runs feedback on it. Relevant people that have experience both from the engineering side and the design side, product side, and of course, our community side as well, since we're building a product for community managers. After our team feedback, we build prototype version 2. Then, this is already the second prototype, we show it to advisors, and we ask our advisors for feedback. Advisors are absolutely amazing. Again, especially if you're an early stage company, having an advisory board of folks that understand your industry and know what you want to build, know the tasks better than you do, is absolutely crucial. And only after advisor feedback, so we have team ideas, user feedback, advisor ideas, product roadmap, all of these feedbacks here, we build prototype number 3. We make sure it's the right one, and then we send it to development. And then we get user feedback, and then the loop continues. So that's how we currently work in terms of prototyping and running this sort of user feedback cycle. How to get the right user feedback? Number 1, like I said, find the users that match the persona. So when you already invest time in drawing your whiteboard or building your make connections and things like that, you want to make sure you're talking to the right people. Next step, understand the task they want to do, right? Understand the end journey, understand the goal that they want to complete. Have them complete the task without your help. This is really important. I struggled with this one a lot. I would always navigate users during my interviews like, oh, you just click here and it's done. You have to let them do it themselves, otherwise you'll never learn. And last but not least, track all the feedback you get on your prototypes in one place. And this is the core of all of it, right? You build those prototypes to get the feedback so you can build a better product. So if you don't track it, if you don't evaluate it, if you don't get back to it, you've done this whole journey for nothing. All right, questions to ask. When you have your prototypes ready, whether it's version 1 or version 30, we've been there. Number 1, and there are different areas. Looks like we have 2 number 1s. This is the prototype number 1 of the presentation. Number 1, and all the questions should be around validating the user. So first of all, make sure you're talking to the right people. Number 2, test the prototype, right? Does the prototype help you or the user complete the task that you want to do? And last but not least, all these user interviews and prototyping and testing can actually help you qualify. So you can actually qualify the potential and learn if this user would pay for the product to complete the task for them. All right, you're in an awesome crowd, so I actually have a third quick learning for you before we go into our 4 months of prototyping. My third big learn is keep iterating. I actually don't have any big lessons learned or questions for you, but I've talked to my team today, and we've kind of agreed on this, that once you have your product live, it's actually the best type of testing, right? So I truly believe that there actually isn't a better way to test your product than to have it, what we call it, testing in production. So don't stop the feedback cycle there, and keep working with this version 1, version 2, version 3. We're currently rebuilding, I think, the 3rd or 4th version of our core feature. And if I look at the first one now, it honestly looks like I designed it. I'm not the designer in our company, and it just makes magic. So always remember to talk to your users, and even look at the current features you released and prototype before as a great source of inspiration and feedback. All right, so now to our 4-month journey. Like I said, it's March 2023, and we're talking with our team, we're talking with our investors, and we're thinking, all right, how do we do this really fast? We've been building for over a year. That's a lot of time. Feels like a month in startup time, but how do we like find this next thing? How do we really solve the pains for our potential customers? And we said, all right, we have to start from the very beginning. So first things first, and to give you an idea, Talk-based analytics is a product that we've built that helps you understand the ROI of your community. If you have a product or a company and you have a community around whatever you're doing, we help you understand if that community helps you onboard users, if it helps you with your sales pipeline, if it helps you with customer retention. We give you the exact number. So how did we build it? Well, like I said, we realized that our current solution wasn't really solving the task for our users. This is actually a screenshot from our mix panel. You can see that our retention was dropping quite a bit after just a couple of days. So once we had solid product analytics, we realized this is not good. We need to reiterate. So first step and first thing we did, I ran over more than 40 user interviews again, and we got hundreds of insights. I used a lot of different apps to help me, from scheduling calls through Zoom and all different sort of like social channels, all the way to using Next App, which is a really awesome tool that helps you to find the best snippets of the product feedback, visualize them, and write them together. We collected the feedback and we defined the task we need to solve, which was the ROI, return on interest, in our case. Step number 2. This was May. Step number 2. In June, we built prototype number 1, and we ran interviews with all of our advisors. These are actually, sorry, not all of our advisors, but most of our advisors. So we got the feedback from the right people. We ran just a few interviews, but they were really in depth. They spent many, many hours with us, and we asked them, and we clicked through all the different versions we've designed and painted and drawn to learn, all right, are we going the right way? Is this solving the right task? How would you visualize this, right? They were literally building this with us. And they have some great experience, so that really helped us as well. All right, we're moving on to July. We built prototype number 2, and we took that prototype, did more user interviews. This was actually like the first version. And at that time, we were actually organizing a conference here in Prague. So we were very sneaky, and we, during the conference, would always grab a couple of attendees, buy them a coffee, and in the meantime, run user interviews with them. I mean, we had 150 of our potential customers in one room, so don't blame us. But we ran as many user interviews as we could to validate that second prototype again. This is a picture from the conference with our lovely co-founder. And once we got the second prototype solid, we feedbacked it with the team, we feedbacked it with our advisors and our potential customers and our current customers. We have sort of the version 3, which is talk-based analytics. And with talk-based analytics, like I said, we have built the first customizable analytics on top of communities. So that was the end result. And now we're in August. We're onboarding our first customer. We're still building. It's still partially a prototype. The customer may or may not know that, but we are actively working with them. They're building with us. They're giving us feedback, and it's been a hell of a journey. So what I want to leave you with today, it doesn't really matter what your prototype looks like. It doesn't really matter if it's perfect, if it's polished, if all the colors are right. What matters is if it gets the job done, right? Does it help your user complete their journey, complete the loop, right? Does it help them get the right result? This is, by the way, the first version of the iPhone, for those of you who might not recognize the very famous picture. So yeah, like I said, don't build prototypes that your users like, that just look nice. But really, when you're investing the time in prototyping, build the type of prototypes that really get the task done that your users need. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Clara. It was really great. And we have some questions. Thank you guys for submitting them. We have some great ones. And don't worry if your question doesn't get answered right now, we will save them for the panel discussion. So Clara, how can you really encourage users to give feedback, both good and bad? Because let's be honest, how many of us have skipped a feedback form?
It's very true. Number one, we always do feedback through calls or in person. So one-on-one or 2 people, like 2 potential users and 1 interviewer. I don't think we actually ever run a survey with our users. And I think to get the right feedback, you have to ask the hard questions. Like you ask like, oh, does this look good? Oh yeah, guys, this looks really good. All right, but does it get the job done? Would you pay for this, right? So again, going to those hard questions, I think is the core. And I think once you run a couple of user interviews, you're just gonna realize, you know, that the person just didn't want to tell me the truth, and that person like was really honest with me. And then the second type of person you choose as your advisor, right? So you have to really find the right people. Like I said, right now I probably run hundreds of interviews, and probably 99% of them like weren't really helpful. But you know, through that mess, we've learned which people to talk to and which people can give us great feedback.
Thank you. That's a great advice. And the most voted right now, do users know what they want? So that's very broad, but can you answer?
Oh, that's so good. My initial thought was no, but I think that users know what their job is. They need to know what they need to do. They just don't know what it looks like, right? And that kind of comes back to the whole idea of not building things that are pretty, but building things that work, because it helps them solve it, right? And if you get stuck on one way or one pattern too soon, it can really, really derail you. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, some users might know what they want, but I do also have many interviews, even with our current users, asking us, are you going to build those features? Are you going to build this? Are you going to build that? And I ask them, do you have a current tool that you're using instead of it? Yeah. It's like, why do you want us to build it? I don't know. I just don't like their logo. I'm like, awesome. So, you know, like you always have to ask why. We had a great presentation in our team, sort of a learning session by the amazing Martin Felsman from Product Board. And he told us that he has the rule of 5 whys. So he asks why 5 times. Gets really annoying, but it really gets to the point. So ask why a lot of times, and you'll find out hopefully what they really want.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, and we'll save the rest of the questions for later. Round of applause for Clara.